Hi friends, blog followers, family, fans. We've had a request, sorry the cameraman's just thumbing me over, had a request to do a virtual tour of the farm. So we've got our camera and our tripod set up and we've got some editing software. So we're going to take you around bit by bit, starting here in front of the house, making our way through the garden onto the veggie patch, up to our terraces where we're doing most of the work at the moment, and we'll give you a sneak preview of some of the birds as well. So hi again and welcome to Devil's Nest. So here we are in front of the house where there used to be garden beds that came all the way up to the edges of our verandas with paths winding through them, which left us absolutely no room for outdoor entertaining. So we're pretty certain that the people who built the garden and used to live here didn't actually have friends. So in order to be able to do some outdoor entertaining, setting up our fire pit and being able to actually hang out outside, we've decided to rip up the garden beds in the path. We found the path though that we thought was just laid of nice flat flagstones was actually mostly made of boulders that had been buried into the ground. We're not sure why they used those. We're thinking it might have something to do with the original fireplace that they designed, which was a big pillar of rocks going up through the second story of the house. However, whatever the reason, we managed to wrangle the boulders out of the ground and got a big pile of rocks, but we also made a nice flat open grassy space here. So we often bring out, as I said before, either the fire pit or our chimney, or when we have barbecues or set up our pizza oven, we could all sit around here comfy, and we've got the kitchen right behind us and access to the house for our music, drinks, bathroom, whatever. For my birthday last year, I got a bunch of Bunnings vouchers because my friends and family all know me well, and everyone loves a Bunnings voucher, and this year I decided to use them to get all the components for the water feature, which is sitting behind me. So the shells, the waterfall, the pump, the pipes, even a little fogger which lights up in different colours in the dark, just for a bit of frisson. But I managed to dig it into the ground at this location where there was looked like a stone spiral that they were trying to make. I'm guessing a spiral garden, so it's not an uncommon principle to have a small hill with a spiral of stones describing a track where different types of plants can be planted to best effect based on the aspect, whether it be more sun, more wind, rain or whatever. So that was there. I dug that out, and over the years a number of bulbs have propagated through the soil. So that actually made it quite tough going to get them all out of the clay. Plus I hit a major taproot for the old grapevine which is behind me, which is finally flourishing again now that we've got the possums under control, courtesy of our two dogs. So this adds a nice little bit of atmosphere to the garden, even though we've got a massive dam just down the hill and a creek at the bottom of the property. It's just nice to have a little something closer to the house to give the mosquitoes space to breed. Here we are now in Chickenopolis, I guess you could call it. This is our hen house. The area was originally a dog run. We found it got too muddy in the winter time to keep them out here, and our second dog, Jess, who we've nicknamed Jessica P, was really good at getting out, even of the steel pen we've built for them since here. So we could no longer really use this practically as a dog pen. So any good sustainable system needs plants as well as animals, and the chickens and ducks were our first foray into that. We have realised the old adage that where you have livestock you have dead stock, and we've had a few losses which you will have heard about all on our blog. Most recently one of our roosters died or was killed, but Brad found the carcass being attacked by the Isa Browns, the little featherless fucks that you can see behind me here. So this was quite well greened, lots of weeds sort of up to thigh height through here, but over time the Barnevelders, which are our first stock, and the Isa Browns have now slowly started to rip it apart, as is their wont. They're having a great time in here, and as you can see we've got now 8 birds, and they've got plenty of space to roam around and just be chooks. They do have a pecking order. The closer ones to me here, I'm not sure if they're in shot of the Barnevelders, and the little scrap you just heard there, that was Boudica being attacked by one of the Isas. She's a Barney cross. And it is like watching a little drama play out. We moved our chairs into here the day we brought the Isas home just to watch it all unfolding, so it's pretty entertaining. These aren't at the point of lay, but the Isas are, so we're getting an egg out of each of their bums once a day now. So we're finding all sorts of ways to eat those eggs, quiches, scrambled eggs, fried eggs, boiled eggs, poached eggs, egg sandwiches, lots of eggs. So we're looking at ways to preserve those. Putting them in hydrated lime. The solution of hydrated lime means you can store them at room temperature for a long time. we'll probably look at pickling them as well, and you can smoke eggs too, whether they're cooked or raw. But the birds are having fun. The seeds that you've just seen blowing at my face also help feed them, and we keep them also fed on just shop bought food for now until we can just establish exactly how to get them a balanced diet out of the scraps and the produce from the property. Here we are about 5 feet to the left of where we were just talking to you in the chicken pen. On this side of the fence we've got the ducks. We keep them separated because ducks are known to rape chickens. So to avoid any poultry assault cases on our hands, we've decided to keep the two species separate. So we've got 9 ducks as well. We're trying to figure out if they're drakes or not. There is a telltale curly feather that grows on the drakes that tell us, but that seems to be a bit hit and miss. We've seen it develop and then disappear on the birds, so we're not sure if we've got trans ducks or if they're actually still yet to develop those characteristics. Once we know, we'll make sure that there's just one drake in the flock, and so that they will protect the flock without the female ducks getting too attacked for amorous reasons by the drakes, because they are quite feisty lads. We set them up here, which is actually the bottom end of our veggie garden, which is all the way up here, although this season it's been mostly a weed garden. But we had the ducks penned in with a bit of old portable fencing that we banged up just to give them a sense of security and keep them safe from potential predators before we had the gates fixed. And thought, oh well, they've settled in now, we'll lift the fence away and give them room to roam, and they're not having a fucking bar of it. They've looked at the fence and thought, oh no, fuck that, we're staying right here. So even though they've got quite a good space, like a couple of 100 square metres here, they've just stayed in this one little tranche of land here at the bottom, and it's really getting bogged up with duck shit. So I think I'm going to have to move their shelter and their food and water to somewhere else so that they actually start roaming around the yard a bit more. They're good birds to have in something like a veggie garden because they're not prone to destroying the greenery like the chickens are, and they do have a tendency to hunt the snails and slugs. So as they say in permaculture, you don't have a snail problem, you have a duck deficiency. We do have raised beds that they might not be able to reach, but that's not to prevent us from planting things down at duck level in future. The garden itself has got 5 raised beds in it at the moment, with another 3 more planned, and maybe a bit of a seating area in there too. We'll take you up and show you the greenhouse in a minute. We're going to put a more permanent structure there because here in Tassie we don't have the growing season we're used to on the mainland. So once we've got that in, we'll have a bit more productivity. Behind me and to my right are the raised beds that we've built so far. We built them on a principle of hugelkultur, which is taking dead wood and putting it in the bottom, and it acts like a sponge and a slow release fertiliser and fills up the space of the bed itself as well. And we've topped that off with soil that we brought in from the local nursery. We had a massive blackwood cut down over here that was taking up a lot of space and light off what's become our fruit grove, and we used some of the branches and trunks from that blackwood to shred them down and build the hugelkultur base in the beds. We've just used some treated pine and the old roof sheeting from when we had the roof replaced on the house, and just cobbled them together in a really simple design. It's just something to hold the soil in place. We planted these out really sparsely, really conservatively, but as you can see, everything's gone apeshit in there. I think because of the high nitrogen content it was a mix of compost and topsoil that we put in the beds. They've really gone nuts, and we've barely had to water these all season as well, so the hugelkultur process seems to be working. We do have a number of weeks of drought-like conditions in most summers. This year's been a bit wetter than others, so we do have to have the ability to water our plants and make sure we've got the moisture up. We've been taking the leavings from the birds and putting them on the beds to begin with to create a bit of mulch, but the plants are so dense now they're shading out the evaporation themselves. In order to get around the garden, which is actually quite a sloped site, we have dug in the path, which you can see underneath and behind me, but everything's so fertile here that we've now got grass growing up from the gravel itself. We dug the ground level, pinned in some treated pine with star pickets and put down weed mat. The weeds are just growing on top of it, so it's going to be a bit of a battle just to keep the vegetation down and areas clear for us to move through. The rest of the garden beds will also be put onto terraced sections. We did notice we've propped these beds up on basically bits of rock, same as these ones, to level them out. And we had a black tiger snake living in under this one and had to get the catchers out to come and take it away for us. So we know now not to do that. The bottom ones will build sturdy frames that don't leave gaps for those critters to get into. The rest of the fence, the rest of the garden's pretty well fenced and stops paddymellons and possums getting in. And we're trying to make use of a lot of the vertical space we've got as well. So there's a couple of strings above us which we've got the hops growing on from a garden arch, which is just behind you there. And we put these arches in between the beds too to create a growing space for vines and different types of plants that are going to like that vertical aspect. The other beds we're not sure we'll be rotating crops through, but as mentioned, with the slow or the short growing season in Tassie, we really need a proper greenhouse to get things started sooner. So we'll take you up and show you what we've got and what we plan for that. Behind me is our greenhouse, at least the first attempt that we've made to build one. It's just a cheap version that we pulled off the shelves at Bunnings, and it really hasn't fit together properly since we got it. Even the first day we put the frame together on really flat ground, the plastic sheeting around it couldn't pull tight enough for us to close the front flap or door. So we ended up relocating it up here, and again this whole site is sloped, and we've had to dig into the hillside just to allow us to get a flattish patch of ground to build it on. But the wind's just really tearing at it and pulling it apart, and the frame on one side is now twisted and starting to buckle out. The whole thing's probably going to go down the hill at some point. We're keeping it in place with star pickets, but it's just getting battered and beaten. So we are going to build a proper rigid structure with polycarbonate panels and a frame. So the first thing we have to do is do a proper levelling and pin in some more pine edging. That'll give us a nice flat supported ground. We probably won't go to the lengths of doing concrete, but maybe we can chuck some gravel down or something in there if we like, but dirt's fine as well. It's just going to be enough to get some seedlings growing before the hard frosts have ended, just to give us that few weeks extra lead time to get the productivity up, because we're really used to things happening a lot faster with the warmer temperatures and sun on the mainland. But it's now mid-February and we're only just starting to see the tomatoes ripen, whereas we're used to that happening in late January in the warmer climes. So it's a nice problem to have though, because it is much more comfortable living here and we do get a lot more rainfall. We just have to adjust to the some of the other drawbacks that were unanticipated. So over time we will have all this nicely terraced all the way down to where the ducks currently live. And this is our key productive space, aside from the terraces, or terraces as I like to call them. We'll take you up there shortly. But because of the drought conditions that I did mention before, we do have a tap that we've run down from the spring, which has traditionally fed the house and the domestic supply for the last 30 odd years. We do use it to top up our main water tank, which has its own collection area now, but the main line comes straight down from the spring, from a water hole over the road, and we can use that to fill up watering cans, water the birds, and water directly into the garden here. And really it just makes it possible for us to keep this garden alive. Without that there, it'd just be too hard carting water around manually. So we ran that line down. Sometimes the water does go a bit foul, but that's fine for watering the plants. It's just a bit of extra fertiliser. The last place we've been working on close to the house is here in the terraces. This was a really steep hillside, as we spoke before about the big blackwood, which came right up above where I'm sitting next to these walnuts, and in fact engulfed them and was hogging all the light. It was a big beautiful tree, but it was just taking too much away from this really sunny north facing slope. So the choice to have that strategically cut out is not one that we've regretted. So you may be able to capture some of the leaves in the top of the frame, which for our hazelnuts, but that's where the camera currently is now. We've got a patch of hazelnuts right there, the walnuts here, and then this hillside, once we had the blackwood removed, we got a fellow in with his earth moving equipment, and he dug 3 terraces into the hill for us, which allow us to access flat ground to plant and grow trees, but also to harvest them. So we can stand on the next terrace up and harvest the tops of the trees below, and so on all the way up to the top. So there's 3 terraces, which has given us quite a lot of growing space. We will build chicken runs on there, and eventually we'll have goats too to help get in there and get rid of weeds and pests. And we'll also grow ground covers, so have the multi-layered approach of having things that like the shade underneath the fruit trees, having chickens in there that'll eat the fallen fruit that we don't pick and eat ourselves. And it's actually worked out really well to have this particular area put aside for that purpose, because there were trees there in the past. Some of those remain, so all that we're really doing is filling in the gap between these walnuts, our couple of apple trees, our Nashu pears and our quince at the top. It'll turn back into a fruit and nut grove, so it's going to be a perfect area for growing lots of delicious stuff and getting out here to be able to harvest it all. I'm standing up here to give you a sense of the scale, because it's quite hard to grasp on a flat screen and without the sense of depth that you get being here in real life. So where the camera is now is actually at the level of the bottom terrace. I'm on the middle one with the top behind me. It was a really steep hillside, so much so that we had to buy footy boots just to be able to get up and down it while we're clearing the blackwood, which fallen branches covered this entire space. So in order to be able to navigate it properly, we have manually built these sets of steps. The camera's sitting on one of those now. It's just treated pine frames that we've pinned into the ground with star pickets and then backfilled with boulders and road base. But it was really hard work. We had to dig the frames into the ground first and then move close to a ton of rock, bricks and road base to fill in the frames. You can actually see the final three up the top behind me here. And over to my right, there's a ramp. The fellow who did the landscaping for us was aware of our intentions and gave us a bit of an access path there. That saved us having to put any more steps into that spot. So down on the bottom terrace, we've got two feijoas, which were growing down in the veggie garden, but against the fence line, which had really poor soil and they never grew. So we've transplanted them up here in the looser dirt that's been disturbed by the earth moving works. And up on this level, we have a mandarin tree, which is in a similar position to the feijoas, and a mulberry which we've brought in. A lot of this green you can see here is actually weeds, so there's a lot of thistles and things and grasses growing, but that's fine for now because it's going to help stabilise the soil until we get other species in to hopefully dominate the type of things that are growing. And the final terrace is actually quite small, just up above the mulberry bush here. And just this season, we've chucked in a few pumpkins there because they'll take advantage of the heat and the sunlight and they'll spread out and provide a nice coverage over the top of the terraces. And above that, right at the back of the property where you can see there's all grass there, we'll put in a few more tall trees that aren't going to take the sun from anything in front of them. And hopefully, yeah, we'll have enough varieties here that we'll be able to just walk outside and pick ourselves a fruit salad. We're up here at the top of the property where we've put in this giant water tank. So it's sitting on a concrete slab, which was under what's now our main shed, which is down by the house. But this is the spot where the people who originally developed the property put the shed and they lived in it while the main house was being built. We figured, well, may as well use what we've got. There was already a good enough concrete slab here that can take the weight of a 22,000 litre tank. So we ordered that up and had it driven up from Hobart, and with the advice of the suppliers, put down a sheet of plastic to stop the lime in the concrete reacting with the galvanised steel. We went with steel just because it was the cheapest option. Plus, in future, if there's requirements for bushfires, they do need to have steel tanks as well as poly tanks. Adjacent to it, we did have this shed roof built. So again, there was nothing here but the slab. We had that put up just so there was some collection surface going into it. We do still fill this tank from the spring, which enters the property just behind that tree over there. So it comes from the waterhole over the road, and that line comes in past this tank and all the way across the top of the grove to where an old header tank used to sit, which then goes into the pressure pump down to the house. So we still have access to that line to put irrigation into the grove as well if we want to. At this stage, we've just run the line down to the veggie patch for now. Most of the time, we do need to fill this tank up every few months. We just let the water that comes in from the spring settle in there, and it's been fine to drink without any major filtration. We do just have a jug that we use to filter it. You'll see a section of vertical pipe here. That's the first flush system, so when the rain does come, especially after a period of dry spell, and all the dust and bird shit and whatnot that's collected on the roof flushes into the system, it gets diverted away from the infill to the tank. We did find it was working a little bit too well and diverting all of the water from even getting in, so we've had to try and moderate its action somewhat. So we're still learning, it's still a process. We would like to get tanks down by the house because that's where our main collection surface is, and we do see up to 2 metres of rainfall here a year. So really, if we had the surface area of the house collecting water, we wouldn't need to top it up or rely on the spring for our own domestic supply. So we need to look into that. It's all money, and at the moment we do have water, so it's not like we need to implement something we're missing. So over time we'll get it all implemented, but yeah, this is where we've got with this bit so far.